Building a computer is one of the most jubilant experiences you can have. You will need to conduct prior research on different computer components, their functions, and their manufacturers, but once that is done, you are well and truly ready to build your own computer. I hope that this DIY video tutorial on how to build your own computer can inform you about the different stages of assembling a computer, as well as help change the misconception that computer building is impossible. The components for this specific PC tower are a CPU, RAM, motherboard, hard drive, power supply, graphics card, case, and solid state drive. Other external peripherals are a keyboard and case fans if your case does not come with any included. Additional required components are a monitor, a DVD driver to install the operating system, a USB Wi-Fi connector, and a DVI cable. The first step of building a computer is to get the motherboard ready. When you open the motherboard box, there will be the I/O shield, SATA cables, the motherboard manual, and the CD drivers, which are essential for the later stages of the computer building. Beneath all that is the physical motherboard. The motherboard is a main circuit board and the most central part of a computer, holding together crucial parts like the CPU, memory, and other components. Always be careful when dealing with a motherboard and any other computer component as they're very fragile. Put the peripherals back into the box and place the motherboard on top of the box. The box will act as a free, non-conductive working place, preventing the shorting out of the motherboard. Firstly, lift the retaining arm of the processor socket on the motherboard. Remember to hold the edges of the CPU like shown in the video, as the two faces of the processor are delicate and need to be dealt with great care. Align the golden triangle arrow on the processor to the corresponding arrow on the motherboard. Set the processor down on the socket until it falls into place. No large amount of pressure needs to be applied during this process. Give it a gentle wiggle to ensure that it fell into the socket correctly, and then lower the retention arm. The box for the processor contains a CPU heatsink with pre-applied thermal paste and easy installation mechanisms. Place the heatsink down on top of the CPU, ensuring that the fan cable coming out of the fan is as close as possible to the fan head on the motherboard labeled CPU. From here, the tool-free latch mechanism can be engaged. Push on one side of the hook, and now move the mounting arm down into its locked position. This puts the appropriate amount of pressure on top of the CPU to aid with thermal transfer. Repeat this step on the other side of the heatsink as shown in the video. RAM is arguably the easiest component to install, and the only concern is picking RAM that is compatible with your motherboard. Pull back either one or two tabs depending on the type of motherboard. Position the memory inside the slot, ensuring that the notch on the bottom of the memory is lined up with the slot on the motherboard. Push it down gently on both sides. If the latches click back into place, it means the RAM is firmly seated. Now, leaving the motherboard aside, it's time to prep the case. The case is what houses all the components of the computer. It should be fine as long as the case is able to house all the components and has ample room for airflow and cable management. Pull the case out of the box. Remove the plastic cover and styrofoam plates in preparation for installing your components inside of the case. Remove the screws that hold the side panel of the case. For many cases, only your hands are needed to remove the screws. However, for some, you may need to use a screwdriver. Once you have done so, gently remove off the side panel of the case. Remember to place it somewhere safe and visible, as the side panel will be needed near the end of the computer building process. The location of the power supply differs on every case, but generally there is a large rectangular space in a corner. For this case, the spot is located at the bottom left corner as seen in the screen. Gently push the power supply in the slot so that it fits with the rectangular power supply space. Next, use the screws that came within the power supply box to secure the power supply. From the back side of the case, align the power supply with the screw holes. Then, screw the screws in the holes to secure the power supply in its place. The number of screws will vary depending on the selected power supply and chosen case. For cases where you can open the other side panel, now might be a good time to open it. Do so by unscrewing the side panel screws using either your hand or screwdriver. Keep the side panel as it will be needed later. Opening up this side panel will allow you to manage and tidy up messy cables during the rest of the building process. Take out a hard drive tray from the bottom right hand corner. Using the correct screws that came with the case, screw the storage device to the storage bay in the appropriate position and put the storage tray back into the original mounting location. The location of the hard drive bays will also differ on the case model and manufacturer, however they are generally located at the right hand side. Like the SSD shown in the video, 2.5-inch storage devices are secured using different screw positions than 3.5-inch storage devices, like a typical mechanical hard drive. If you plan to use multiple storage devices like the mechanical hard drive shown in the video, repeat the same step. Every case will have a designated long rectangular empty space to place the I/O shield. These I/O shields will help align and secure the motherboard I/O ports correctly. Carefully hold the edges of the I/O shield and install it as shown in the video. The sides of the I/O shield are very sharp, so do be careful during the installation process. The case will include golden motherboard standoffs, which will lift the motherboard from touching the surface of the case. Often, there are special screws that simplify the installation process. Align these standoffs on the case with the respective holes on the motherboard. For certain cases like this one, motherboard standoffs come pre-installed. Use the appropriate screws as shown in the case manual to fix the motherboard onto the case. Repeat the step until all screws are screwed in. Many cases like this one have cable management holes. These holes help route cables, making cable management tidy, easy, and effective. Connect one end of a SATA cable to the motherboard SATA port. Using the cable management holes in the case, route data cables for the storage devices. These cables are included in most, if not all, motherboard boxes. Any SATA storage device should have two cables connected to the device, one from the motherboard and one from the power supply. The correct cables and their positions can be searched up on the internet. There are several cables that need to be connected to the motherboard from the power supply. The three main ones are the 24-pin connector currently on the screen that powers the motherboard, the 4 or 8 pin that powers the CPU, and the 6 or 8 pin that powers the graphics card. These cables are labeled with a specific use, and the location for where they should be plugged into the motherboard are also included in the motherboard manual. The graphics card or GPU often comes with protective stickers and covers to prevent it from being damaged during shipping. Therefore, make sure to take off the sticker and protection covers as pointed out on the graphics card before installing the graphics card itself. Using a screwdriver, remove the PCIe slot protection by unscrewing the screw that secures it. Do not lose it, however, as you will need to cover up your PCIe slot again should you decide to take out the graphics card. Then align the graphics card with the PCIe slot you want to install it in. Preferably install the graphics card on the most top PCIe slot nearest to the CPU. To explain simply, the higher PCIe slots typically are more efficient and effective, and graphics cards can significantly benefit from this advantage. Press the GPU, and if installed correctly, the clip on the PCIe slot should close and secure the graphics card automatically. Now is the time where you can review the steps and progress you have made. Now is where you can check whether all the cables are plugged in tight, whether all the components are installed correctly, and whether anything in general is missing. As the video currently demonstrates, you can also use zip ties to further manage and tidy any messy cables within the case. If certain mistakes are found, further steps may need to be taken. For example, the HD, audio, and reset switches have gone loose on the motherboard. However, this particular PC is built in a relatively small case, and therefore the graphics card had to be taken out in order to replug the switches. Here is a clip showing this process. As such, certain problems may force you to take additional steps. Therefore, it is advised for first-time beginners not to build in small cases without room for cable management. Cable management helps maintain a clean aesthetic, contributes to fluent airflow within the case, and prevents the cables from disrupting the PC when it is running. Here is the fun bit. Take out all your peripherals. It is time to test the PC. The monitor in the box will come in multiple parts, and so you will need to assemble it. Plug in the monitor power to the power port, typically at the back of the monitor, and to consent. Connect the mouse, keyboard, and any other external peripherals. Then connect the display connector from the graphics card port to the monitor. There are several types, but the one in the video is DVI. Make sure to plug everything into the consent. And make sure that the consent is turned on. Since you've finished setting up everything, it's time to turn the PC on. Now the PC is on, it's time to install your preferred operating system. Once you have done so, do some last setting configurations such as monitor resolution and driver installation. Monitor resolution, as demonstrated here, can be configured in the control panel, while drivers for components can be installed from the manufacturer's website. If the PC still does not turn on or appears to boot with a problem, you could try troubleshooting and returning a faulty component, or revisit one of the computer booting steps to check whether you've missed anything.